So I want to give a few thoughts on Dolores Williams and Womanist Theology, just a few things and a couple of questions. As you read chapter 5 in Christianity on Trial, and we will certainly discuss this at length on Tuesday, but I want to start the discussion now and pose a couple of questions for you to write on the discussion board, and then we'll have a more enlivened discussion together on Tuesday. Um, First, there are two main issues that Dolores Williams brings up, that of whiteness and that of maleness. These are obvious issues when dealing with black women. Whiteness, obviously, because they're black, and then maleness because they are female. The argument, as we've said before, and as J. Cameron Carter kind of points to in Race, a Theological Account, um, the argument is that theology has been too white and too male. And so there needs to be some sort of reclamation of the essence of humanism in order to provide for a presentation of God that is more holistic in nature and that actually speaks to wholeness. As a matter of fact, that's what Kelly Brown Douglas mentions in chapter 5. We see that quote on page 149, 150, where Kelly Brown Douglas says that womanist theologians owe it to themselves to speak out also for the black lesbian in order to be true to the ideal of appropriating wholeness for all. And so this whole notion of wholeness, which starts with self-love, Dolores Williams quoting Lucy from Zora Neale Hurston's Jonas Gordvine says basically that if you don't love yourself, you're going to die before your time. So you got to love yourself first. It's loving yourself first, and then you can love others. And so this self-love is necessary in order to combat this double oppression. She mentions in the epigraph of this chapter, Dolores Williams mentions that the black woman is the oppressed of the oppressed. And so if James Cone writes the God of the oppressed, speaking primarily about black people, and in Dolores Williams' estimation, that would mean black men, then Dolores Williams would write the book, The God of the Oppressed, Oppressed. So, of the oppressed of the oppressed. So the black woman is even lower than the black man. I encourage you to read the story of Hagar, Genesis 16 verses 1 through 16, and then chapter 9 verses, or chapter 21 verses 9 through 21. That story is key to understanding and really grasping what Dolores Williams is trying to do. And then she talks about how black women have been an essential part of the black church, and that's not anything to take lightly. And that is really the crux of what draws her to womanist theology and to seeking to give voice to these women that are such an essential and integral part of black culture and black life. And so her theology of the cross comes out in her experience through literature. We see her narrative, how she tells her own story through some of the things she writes, and how she's able to appropriate some of the things she reads, literary works, to her own life. And so she comes to arrive at her theology of the cross, which is basically, she asks the question, can there be salvific power for black women in Christian images of oppression? For example, Jesus on the cross, meant to teach something about redemption. And her answer is no. And she goes on page 160 to really define what that means. Now, what I want you to do is look at what her definition of the cross is. Look at what her definition of redemption is. And then look at what her definition of relationship is, because it differs starkly from James Cone, yet the entryway is the same. And so two questions. One, how would you compare her articulation or her theology of the cross to James Cone's theology of the cross? Write a brief response to that on the discussion board. And then two, what does liberation mean? Is liberation something that has to have some sort of moniker on the front, some sort of descriptive on the front to say black liberation? feminist liberation, womanist liberation, third world liberation? Does it have to have something on the front, or is there a space and time and social context where liberation is just liberation? And if so, where does it come from? How do you articulate that? Is Dolores Williams getting at that? If not, how do you propose to get at that? Go to the discussion board, articulate that, write that out, and I look forward to seeing you Tuesday. I'm here in Atlanta. I had to do a lecture this morning and then do at Spelman College, and then I was doing some other things at Morehouse this afternoon. But I look forward to seeing you all on Tuesday, and study hard, and read everything, and come to class Tuesday ready to really dig into womanist theology. All right? Peace.